plague doctor, that's why I'm asking.
1645, the year Scotland died. Ring a ring of roses. Dirty white rags dangled from windows like hanging man left on the gallows for the city to witness their shame. The bubonic plague is ravaging Edinburgh. Despite the council's best efforts, people are dying. Soon there'll be more people buried under Edinburgh than living in it. A pocket full of posies. When the plague doctor dies from the disease after a week, the council hires student doctor Alex McRae, promising him £100 to cure the wretched pest. But a man who makes himself a hero makes himself enemies, and when the council can't afford to pay McRae, they'll hope he'll succumb to the disease. Ashes, ashes. But the plague isn't the only way to kill a man, and in the city of the dead, it's not just ghosts who return. We all fall down. Chapter 1. 1645, the year Scotland died. Glazed eyes of the dead watched the cloaked figure creep through Edinburgh's cobbled streets, his beaked mask casting monstrous shadows that slunk along the crumbling walls. People edged away, whispering, Dr. Death. Where he walked, death followed. Rotting bodies lay entangled in the alleys, the June sun and north wind conspiring to poison the air with the foul odour of decay. One body groaned as black rats investigated her. Although her flesh had decomposed, she was still alive. Dirty white rags dangled from windows like hanging men left on gallows for the city to witness her shame. Retching coughs and screams smothered the pitiful moans. Death no longer loitered in the shadows, veiled beyond people's nightmares. He prowled the streets, taking people where they stood. There was nowhere left for them to hide. The figure stopped at the door. Red paint dripped like blood from a mortal wound. May the Lord have mercy on our souls. The words scrawled above the foot-long cross filled McRae not with hope, but with dread. McRae touched the cross. There is no mercy here. He wiped the paint on his leather cloak, leaving a scarlet smear. He must be mad. He wasn't a doctor. He was yet to cure an infected wound, yet he hoped to cure the plague. He could not even see out of the damn mask. He adjusted it and leaned down to tuck his leather breeches into his boots. He beckoned a watchman, who crossed the narrow wind and unlocked the door, his pipe clamped between his teeth. McRae stepped inside the tenement. Gloom swallowed him, the smell of putrefaction lingering despite the herbs hanging in the window. Smoke infused the air from the brimstone burning by the hearth. The stench of hell. Mrs. Calhoun emerged from the bedroom, her haunted eyes revealing death had visited her home. McRae nodded and entered the small room. Rancid odours stirred his stomach. A man lay on the bed, blankets clutched in his decomposing fists. A shriveled rabbit's foot dangled off a leather thong around his neck. His mouth hung open, as though death came before he finished his scream. Pus from the burst bubble in his armpit trickled down his blackened, festering skin. Flies crawled over his face. The buzzing of their wings became the music to die to. McRae stared down at him, gripping his bag. His hooded cloak felt heavy on his shoulders. I had hoped you could help me. McRae removed the man's nightshirt sleeves and picked him up. Don't do this. He turned. Mrs. Calhoun blocked the doorway, fingering the heart pendant around her neck. I cannot leave him to rot. The infection could spread to you if it is yet to take hold. Don't undertake this role. It's not worth it. The Guild of Surgeons and Barbers' apprentice fee is 40 shillings. I cannot afford that on the market trader's wage. I will quit once I have cured this pest and settled my debt with my friend James. John did not see a penny of the wage the council promised. He did not live long enough to earn it. She gestured towards her dead husband. Do you know how long John was the plague doctor? A week. How long have you been the plague doctor? McRae glanced at the man in his arms. Dr. Peachy is my first patient. Mrs. Calhoun's eyes brimmed of pity. How old are you? 26. Do you know what awaits you? I have read about the treatments. You won't find the cure amongst the pages of a book. All John's superstitions, the chicken tail feathers, plague water and frog's eggs he gave his patients, could not save him. That lucky charm around his neck could not save him. Nothing could have saved him. Not even you. His parents died 3 days ago. He could not save them. Next week, the new plague doctor will put you on the cart where your betrothed weeps at your bedside. Tell me then it is worth the money. Mrs. Calhoun walked away as McCrae carried his predecessor to the door. He knocked. The watchman opened it. McCrae stepped into dying sunlight where a cart waited. He laid John on the bodies and followed the cart. John's glassy gaze fixed on him, as though forewarning him of the horrors to come. McCrae looked away. A carriage jolted past, heading for the Flodden Wall, burdened with her family and their belongings. The mother averted her eyes and hugged the bairn to her, as though the mere sight of McCrae would infect her. You cannot outrun death. The wheels of the next death cart rolling behind him drowned out the fleeing carriage. A man staggered along Cowgate, weaving between the cattle before falling to his knees in the filth. He vomited, blood spattering his hands, the street, and the dead bairn he embraced. McCrae's cloak creaked as he knelt and reached for the bairn. No! The man scrambled away, cradling her to his chest. You're the devil! I'm your only hope. McCrae eased the bairn from the man's arms and placed her on the barrow between two dead women. The wheels trundled forwards, the death bell tinkling, the body's limbs flopping with the cart's jerky movements. Bring out your dead! Echoed through the street. McCrae helped the man up. Where do you live? William. William shuffled along Cowgate, which ran parallel to the High Street, and turned right into Borthwick's Wynd. He stopped at a door bearing a scarlet cross. McCrae ushered William inside, motioning to a watchman down the street. He locked the door from outside. McCrae's eyes slowly adjusted to the dim room, lit only by the hearth. I'm McCrae. The large beak muffled his voice. Sweet herbs, dried flowers and bergamot oil masked some odours, but nothing concealed death's putrid perfume. You cannot help us. You're no doctor. Go back to your market stall where you belong. I'm the only one willing to help you until the council's money runs out. I want John. John is dead. I can fetch his corpse from the cart if you wish, but he would be as helpful to you as my family's linen would be. Laboured breathing rattled from the bed in the corner. An elderly couple slept in another bed. Why did they lock us in? Because if they didn't, more folk would die. McCrae moved to the riving fire and laid the poker in the flames. William wheezed, his legs buckling. McCrae crouched, removing a lance and a rag from his pocket. I'm sorry, this will hurt. He unbuttoned William's shirt and pierced the apple-sized bubo in his armpit. William hissed as blood and pus burst from his decaying flesh. McCrae dabbed the weeping wound with the rag, swallowing the vomit, threatening to choke him. Would he get used to the sights, the smells of this wretched disease? Would he live to see it cured? Or would he become just another corpse rotting in the pit while the city died above him? Why has this happened? We stopped bathing because Pastor Matthews said dirt would keep the pest away and God would punish us for our pride. McCrae examined William's blackened fingers and green nails. God punishes murderers, not folk who bathe. He collected the poker. William flexed his fingers. What's happening to them? Your body is dying around you. McCrae wiped William's brow and slipped a stick into his mouth. Bite. He thrust the glowing poker into the bubo, the rancid smell of burning flesh tainting the air. McCrae heaved, clenching his jaw to stop himself vomiting over his mask and his patient. William screamed. McCrae's medical books and cadavers had not prepared him for treating the living dead. Corpses didn't scream. McCrae ran to the door, pounding on it like a still-warm body begging to be released from its grave. The watchman opened it. McCrae fell to his knees and tugged off his mask, vomiting into the dirt. He rested his hands on his thighs, gasping in the warm air. William's decay festered in his nostrils. He heaved and spat. The watchman chuckled. They don't smell like linen, do they, laddie? McCrae wiped his mouth and shot him a contemptuous look. They're infected. What's your excuse? He stood, pulling on his mask, and entered the tenement. Is anyone else infected? My wife, Agnes. William coughed, blood streaking his chin. McCrae patted his shoulder with his gloved hand and approached the bed. The rough breaths of the dying had silenced. A woman on a straw mattress cradled a 5-year-old lad. At the foot of the bed, an 8-year-old lass lay curled up, clutching a doll. McCrae brushed the lass's damp hair from her face. A small bubo lurked behind her ear. She shrieked and wrenched back. Mammy! I'm a doctor, McCrae whispered. She gripped her doll, crying as he lanced the swelling. He examined the lad. Red roses covered his pale, sweaty skin. He hugged his mother, his eyes wide. Are they? McCrae nodded. Tears trickled from William's red eyes. McCrae checked Agnes's pulse, then lowered his head. I'm sorry. No! William pushed McCrae aside and hugged his wife. Agnes! McCrae grabbed the bed. His heart ached at the thought of losing Katrine this way. William collapsed, pulling Agnes into his lap. He sobbed, kissing her face. "Bring out your dead!"